This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutra.com, Whole Family Nutrition. Welcome to the Healthy and Family Show. Each episode features interviews with doctors, experts, and real moms, revealing their secrets on how to keep you and your whole family holistically healthy. Your host is David A. Stone, award-winning movie producer, Amazon best-selling author, certified moringa grower, and founder of CompleteNutra.com, Whole Family Nutrition, which is committed to providing the highest quality, science-backed, non-GMO, all-natural nutritional supplements to keep your whole family healthy. Here's David.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is David A. Stone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Healthy and Family Show. If you're tuning in, that means that you believe that the health and wellness of your family should be top priority, but maybe you're a little bit confused with all the conflicting health advice out there. So our goal with this show is to reveal the tactics that doctors, experts, and real moms use to keep you and your whole family holistically healthy. I'm very excited to introduce to you today a longtime friend of mine and my pastor, John Mitchell. Now, John Mitchell founded a church here in Phoenix called Poema Church about 15 years ago. Poema Church was what a great experience that was, since Poema Church has become New City Church in Phoenix. So if you guys know New City Church, that started with John Mitchell. And so John Mitchell, a whole bunch of the early Poema crew, it brings back a lot of memories. But today I'm going to be interviewing John Mitchell because this show is the Healthy and Family Show, and it's all about holistic health. And one of the pillars of holistic health is spiritual health. Now, I have a spiritual foundation based in Jesus Christ. The Jesus Christ of the Bible, the red letters of the New Testament are his words. Now, I talk about it in my book, Your Gold Mind, Brain Digging Gold Guide. When you go through it, it talks a lot about the golden rule. And the golden rule is really important, but Jesus Christ is the reason that even exists, because he said the golden rule. So this episode, I'm gonna be exploring a lot of topics. Now, I don't mean for any of this stuff to come off as judgy or anything. In fact, these are just deep questions. These are questions that we should be continually asking ourselves. This was about 15 years ago. It's 2020 right now. This was probably 2005 when I first met John Mitchell. Since then, John Mitchell has written a book called Firesong, Rediscovering the Ancient Melody. It's a really cool book. So if you guys have any questions about who the person of Jesus was, I recommend go to Amazon and get Firesong right now. Also, John Mitchell has a series called Theo Talk. Now, this is a workbook, and we're going to have some updates on this workbook coming up soon, but Theo Talk is a series that you can actually watch for free on YouTube, and if you go to Amazon, you can pick up this workbook, and you can go through the workbook on who is Jesus, because it's a really interesting topic, and it's something I think is very foundational to life. Who is Jesus? Now, I'm really excited to get into our interview with John Mitchell. And before we do, I want to give you a quick word from our sponsor, CompleteNutra.com. Now, we've talked about these three products in the last few videos. We've talked about the Complete Essential 6, Complete Turmeric, and Complete Brain and Focus Formula. Now, the reason these are complete is because they have a lot of ingredients that all work synergistically within each one of them. The Brain Formula is complete because we have over 46 all-natural ingredients. The turmeric is complete because we have organic turmeric with organic curcuminoids, 95% curcuminoids. We also have BioPerine, which helps the turmeric and the curcumin get absorbed better into your body. And then we have Essential 6, which is D3, K2, some calcium, and also some BioPerine. And as we spoke about on the last episode, the D3, K2 is extremely important for not only your longevity in an anti-aging scenario, but also to utilize the calcium buildup in your arteries and mobilize it, moving it to where it's supposed to be, in your bones, not in your arteries. So these three are considered the anti-aging pack over at CompleteNutra.com. So if you want to support our guest on the show today, and if you want to support your own health at the same time, go to www.CompleteNutra.com, fill up your cart with some incredible formulas. Try the anti-aging pack today, which consists of Complete Essential 6, Complete Turmeric, and Complete Brain and Focus Formula. And if you enter the discount code FIRESONG20 at checkout, you will get 20% off your entire order of Complete Nutri products. So remember, CompleteNutri.com, enter Firesong20, and you get 20% off your entire products. Firesong is the book that John Mitchell wrote, and if you go to Amazon.com, type in Firesong by John Mitchell and order the book today. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to John Mitchell. I'm excited to have you on the show because this show is about holistic health, and the 5 areas of holistic health that I've kind of determined initially with the beginning of the show was mental health, physical health, spiritual health, relational health, and then the 5th one would be financial health. But really, this show is dedicated to interviewing doctors, experts, and real moms. Now, you are an expert. I know you're not a real mom, but
or a doctor.
But you do have a mom, so that would also, or a doctor. But so there's a lot of ways you could qualify here.
And I know doctors.
Exactly.
So.
But I guess the main way you qualify is because you are an expert on theology, and I've known you, I don't even know how long, was it 2005 when we met?
Oh, yeah, something like that, yeah.
15 years, it's been a long time. But
it's hard to believe it's been that long.
The cool part about our relationship, John, is I've never had anybody else in my life that's helped me with some foundational filters that I actually have to use all the time. In fact, these foundational filters, now when I say that, I'm talking about Jesus, like specifically who the Bible says Jesus is, and the red letters in the New Testament and are what he said. And there's a lot of misinterpretations of Jesus. And the reason I'm bringing this up on a holistic health show is because of the spiritual component. Spiritual health, I think, is a really important part of holistic health. And it's not just spirituality in general. Now, it can be for people, but a lot of people haven't had the chance to get to know Jesus through the lens that you explain him through, because I didn't really understand the personal Jesus until I met you. And I go back to that Psalm when it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because for thou art with me." You know, and that's an Old Testament verse, but it's talking about Jehovah God, and I think it could be related to Jesus in the New Testament. We're talking about
the Good Shepherd. Yeah.
But all this stuff is coming to say that if I didn't have what I call a tether, I call Jesus my tether, because the world is dark, and I like exploring the world, and I have a lot of friends, and I don't have only Christian friends, and in fact, I don't have many Christian friends. But when I'm exploring the world, I get sometimes caught up in pockets of darkness I didn't even know or mean to get caught up into. If I wouldn't have my tether of Jesus, the filter to run everything through the. Now, when I say Jesus, I'm talking about Jesus Christ of Nazareth, born in Bethlehem of the Christian Bible. Like a lot of times people will claim that they also have a relationship with Jesus, but they may be talking about a different version of Jesus. Anyways, so this is just a big thing for me to introduce you, because you've had a foundational impact in my life. And I just want to say, first off, thanks for that.
Oh, well, it's an honor to be friends, Dave, and I've learned a ton from you over the years as well, and we've had a lot of fun.
Definitely a lot of fun.
as well. So it's just humbling, and it's a total honor.
Awesome.
To be with you today, too.
Yeah, thank you. So let's get started. I want to get into why is spiritual health an important component of holistic health? And I think you have a whole different maybe paradigm to throw on me there. And then the second component is, who was Jesus as a person, and why is he important?
Yeah. Well, I'll take those questions in order. You know, in my mind, I don't know that I would divide life up into compartments of physical, spiritual, social, etc.
Okay.
Even though there are compartments. But to me, the spiritual component, if you will, is the one that holds it all together, right? The spiritual life is the river that runs through it, if I can borrow a phrase here. That everything is ultimately spiritual because we were created by God for a relationship with him. That we were created in God's image to reflect his glory as human beings, and in doing so, we flourish. in not doing so, we do something less than flourish. And so the spiritual life, if we could define that as our connectedness to God, the one whose image we bear, then becomes the river that runs through it, becomes the thing that makes everything else make sense. So that God is the foundation. The spiritual life is foundational and permeates every other aspect of life. Does that make a little sense?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that gets a little bit mind-blowing is made in the image of God. And I think sometimes people might even mistake that. And actually, I have a lot of friends. I'm not saying anybody's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying I don't believe what they believe. But I think the big question has been multiple gods versus the one true God, or made in the image of God is different than being God.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's like, I'm really glad you brought that up because God is God and we are not. And I think that's the most fundamental principle in life. And even though that grates against our humanity, I would say it grates against our fallen humanity, our desire to usurp God. It's when we find ourselves in and under God, the one who made us to reflect him, so much so that we can relate to him but still be under him. And when we find ourselves in and under him, that's when we flourish. Because, again, we're connecting to the very source of life. And so I like the word tether you used for that reason. What's that?
We're made to reflect God. So it's we are not God. We are meant. Maybe being made in his image means that we are intended to reflect him. Because I don't think animals can reflect him. Or maybe, they can. They can. Just as far as being part of the creation.
Not like human beings do, because we're given this spiritual capacity that animals don't have. This a capacity to not only discern right and wrong, but to actually relate to God. And in that sense, that's why human beings were created by God to govern the planet, even animals. I would look at it like this, Dave. I think of it as just like the moon doesn't have any light in and of itself, but it only reflects the light of the sun. We see the beauty of at least one side of the moon because it reflects the light of the sun. And in a sense, the moon was made for that purpose. In a real sense, we were made for that purpose.
That's great. Yeah, the moon. It's dark. It's dark. The moon is
throwing down some astronomy now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I love the reflection side because the moon is not the sun. The sun is the sun. The moon just reflects the sun on to the earth and shines pretty bright on a full moon night, actually.
Yeah. So, and that's a great analogy now that I think about it, because the light of the moon that reflects, the light from the sun that reflects off the moon does illuminate the earth. And in the same way, we were meant to live in the light of God and reflect the light of God on the earth. And that's when we're most satisfied. That's when we're most fulfilled. That's when our relationships will be what they were meant to be. I believe that's when we will physically be who we were meant to be. And that's where the spiritual begins to intersect with the social and the physical and the other sociological aspects of culture and those things.
Yeah, how do we reflect the light of God?
How do you mean?
What does that look like?
In what sense, or how do we do it in terms of practically, or both?
I mean, both. What is that? It's like, that sounds good to reflect the light of God, but I guess more practically, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, I think human beings, we're driven by purpose. We're driven by a search for ultimate purpose and meaning and value and rightness and justice. All of those things reflect God's character. And it's interesting, even those who would claim to have no spiritual life at all still have a sense of value, purpose, justice. I would just question whether they can really ground that in a godless universe. And so we reflect those things, I believe, first by connecting with God. And by seeing him as he is, by enjoying him as he is, by finding ourselves in and under him, seek for our rightness. That's just what justice is, the way things ought to be in our own spirit, and our own body and our own community and our own culture.
Yeah. So I guess there's actually three groups of people. There's people that believe that there's one true God. There's people that believe that there's multiple gods. And there's people that believe that there is no God.
Yeah.
Like,
and then you could throw
separate.
in. Yeah. I mean, then there are people who there are such radically different definitions of God.
Right.
Some believe that everything is God. So yes and no. I don't know how far we want to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I think generally.
I think the idea behind all that is that is the rabbit hole. That's the point. Those are all. Everything is a rabbit hole. Anything you choose to learn becomes a rabbit hole. And this is why I find the red letters so comforting, because the Bible's big. I mean, it's like, hey, go read the Bible every day. Yeah, but
I know.
Even if you do, you don't, whatever. The idea is the red letters make the Bible smaller to me.
Yeah.
It's
you mean the words of Jesus, right?
The words of Jesus in the New Testament, because when you actually are able to find a red letter Bible and you could go to the New Testament and you could look at the words in red, that's what Jesus said. Now it's been translated into that translation of Bible. So, but when you look back, all the way back to the Aramaic or whatever, all the way to the early books, it translates the same. I mean, it's the same general words, right?
Remarkably the same, yeah.
CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
Hi, Dr. Jessie Keener here. We're going to talk about the Complete Nutra Anti-Aging Pack. This is a really fun pack, and I'm really glad that I get to participate in it. It's got some of my favorite formulas. One is the brain formula, and if you heard my other video on the brain product, you know I love brain health, and I'm really into brain health, and I'm thrilled that we have this product. This is for mental cognitive performance, helping with short-term memory, helping you kind of pick up the steps, so to speak, with how quickly you process information and retain information. So this is definitely going to help your brain have more neuroplasticity. I know that's a big word, but it means that your brain is more adaptable. It can even create new networks if it needs to, if you're studying something new. So people under stress, that's students, high school students, college students, busy executives, people that use their brain for their living, doctors, nurses, veterinarians, etc. This is a great pack for you. Moms, you definitely need this pack. Dads, you need this pack. So brain health, number one. Number two, we have to target inflammation in the body. Inflammation precedes all disease. So of course, that's a vital part of our anti-aging pack. Complete Turmeric is your answer for reducing inflammation on a day-to-day basis. And it's a great product for men, women alike. Definitely anyone under stress needs that. And then we have our Complete Essential. Now this is a huge area that's sort of often overlooked by people, which is having vitamin D3 with its cofactor, its synergistic cofactor K2. So this is our Essential 6, and that's going to work perfectly with these other ingredients, promoting immune function, helping reverse any tendencies towards disease processes. It can even alter your genetic performance when you're on the right nutrition. I don't know if you knew that, but that's true. So this is any functional medical doctor, any anti-aging expert out there in the world worth their weight is going to say you really have to start as a fundamental to your anti-aging campaign with something like Essential 6, vitamin D3, and K2. So target the brain, promote brain health, promote brain neuroplasticity, target the inflammation in the body. People feel so much better when their inflammation goes down, and target vitamin D3, K2, Essential 6 to promote complete anti-aging for your body with Complete Nutra.
CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
I like to take a bit of a C.S. Lewis approach. C.S. Lewis was a great scholar of the mid-20th century, and he has a book. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and you're familiar with a lot.
Definitely.
But in his book, Mere Christianity, what he tries to do is kind of bring Christianity in the person of Jesus, to the nub. Who is he, and what was his message really about? And I think that that's a very healthy approach. And the way I look at it is, on the center of the page, who Jesus is and what he's about is really clear. And the further you go from the center to the edges of the page, the more you get into some interesting questions. And I think it's fair to discuss those things. But Jesus really clearly claimed to be the one who came to fulfill the ancient promise of God all the way back in Genesis 3:15, after Adam and Eve fell into sin and alienated themselves from God. And if you think about that, if you alienate yourself from the source of life, that's going to mess you up. right?
Absolutely.
And so mankind was really jacked up, and that's where evil comes from, and all those sorts of things, pain and suffering and death and even bodily dysfunction, because we became alienated from ourselves, as well as from one another, as well as from the rest of creation.
Wow.
And so God promises in Genesis 3:15, he's going to send a champion, a Messiah, also in Greek, that's Christ, to destroy the works of the devil, conquer the power of sin, lift us from our fall, and restore to us life as it was meant to be in and under him. That's really the seminal promise in the Old Testament. And the Old Testament is all about just unfolding that promise until you come to the Gospels, where we find Jesus, who in his very first utterance says, hey, the kingdom has come. Basically, because I, the king, have come. The promised new covenant kingdom has come, and I'm about to make it happen. And then so Jesus lives the perfect life that we don't live, and he talks about what life was meant to be. For example, in the Sermon on the Mount. I know you're a big Sermon on the Mount fan.
I've been reading it in the last week. It's really, really great. The more I read it,
But it's challenging too, and it's
challenging.
Kind of like, it's like a gut punch at the same time.
Yeah,
or like a really intense chiropractic visit.
It's really deep.
Adjust.
And I read it in every version. If you go Amplified or Student Bible, and if you go the Message, and if you go King James, kind of give it all the versions. Boy, it is really interesting.
Yeah. So he lays out what life in the restored kingdom would look like, or life what it was meant to be in and under God would feel like, and how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to God, how we relate to one another.
It's like rules for life. It's like if someone's like, nobody ever told me what to do here in life. Well, this is Jesus is like, this is exactly what you should do.
It's exactly right. And what's really interesting about the Sermon on the Mount is it begins with what is called the Beatitudes. The Latin beatus means virtue. That begins with what kind of a person you are that lives this kind of life. And what's fascinating is he starts off by saying that the greatest virtue we can have is the knowledge that we are unable to live rightly apart from God's grace, because we've rebelled against him. We need his help. We need to be reconnected to him so that he can live in and through us. So it's not like Jesus says, I'm just going to give you a new ethic to follow. He says, hey, you were created for a relationship with God. You rebelled against that relationship. Here's what life is supposed to look like. Let me bring you back there by living the perfect life you don't live. And here's what's fascinating. He predicted and pulled off his own death and resurrection from the dead, through which he would cancel our sins that separated us from God in order to bring us back into a right relationship with God. And through his resurrection, he brings us newness of life so that we can begin to live out the life we were created to live in and under him.
Wow.
And that's really who Jesus is, why he came, and what Christianity is in a nutshell. It's a restatement of the second commandment. Love your neighbor as you want to be loved, right? As you would love yourself if you were them loving you. And Jesus says something else profound. This is the paradox of the gospel. He says, if you love your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you will gain it to life eternal. And eternal life for Jesus, it doesn't begin when you die. Eternal life is a kind of life in a relationship with the eternal God. What's fascinating about those statements that he makes is that real life is found when I give myself away, first to him and then to others, really to him by giving it away for others. And that's so contrary to what we're told today, that it's all about you, living for you, you deserve this, you should be served, you're number one. Well, Jesus went third, right? The Son of God left the glory of heaven to become a man in order to serve God the Father and then us before considering himself. So Jesus went third. And if you think about it, if we believe that Jesus lived the perfect life, and I believe he did, was he the perfect human being? He absolutely was. He was God in the flesh, and he lived the perfect human being, perfect human life by going third, by giving himself to God and to us. And he was full of joy, and he prays in John 15 through 17 as he's praying in in his high priestly prayer right before he goes to the cross, one of the things he says in that prayer is, I pray that your joy would be like mine, and it would be full. So in other words, I want you to be full human beings, like I'm a full human being. And how will you do that? By giving yourself away first to God and then to one another, dying to yourself in order to live in and through me.
And that
it's a
circles
paradox.
to vertical over horizontal. That's where that circles
Yes.
back to. Definitely. A vertical relationship, loving God first. And that's why in a Christian marriage, it's both people decide to love God first, and and then their love for each other grows out of that. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I look at the vertical relationship flowing upward this way and then outward this way, right? So I have this vertical relationship with God that then floods my life horizontally, right? And so in my most important relationships like marriage, the closer we are in the vertical sense, in the closer our hearts are and our spirits are to God, the easier it is for us to be close to one another horizontally.
There's another thing I want to kind of circle also back around to when you were talking about rediscovering the ancient melody, your book Firesong. I think one of the things that I had this conversation with you a long time ago was about we were designed as eternal souls. And so humanity, if you look at what sci-fi's trying to do, even people, even like AI and everybody's trying to do right now, is we're trying to seek living forever on earth in this body. And I think the interesting thing is we're trying to seek that because we remember that we are eternal, that we were created eternally.
We weren't made to die.
We're going to live forever, just not here, not like we expect something else. So can we touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, God created us to live forever. I would say technically it's only God is eternal, if eternal means existing in both directions. But the way you're defining it, for sure. We were created to live forever, but God sustains us forever as we live, right? He's the one who holds us in existence. We don't necessarily live. We're dependent on God. But we were created to live, not die. That's why death is so wrong. Everything about it is just wrong. It doesn't just hurt. It's like, this is just wrong, right?
Yeah,
people
definitely
get angry about it. It's not who we were meant to be. The world is not what it was meant to be, right?
I think we know that. We know that so much, especially nowadays.
But if that's true, then we're implying that it should be another way.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
And if it should be another way, we need to ask ourselves the question, where does that oughtness come from? Where does that should be come from? And I'm convinced, and I do argue this in Firesong, but I plagiarized from the Bible, that we come from Him. We come from the should of being in a right relationship with Him. Where we are now is, as a race, apart from Christ intervening, we're separated from God. Christ came to bring us back into relationship with God. And by grace through faith in what Christ has done for us, He restores a relationship with Him so that we can move back to the who we were meant to be kind of humanity.
Wow. I mean, it's because when you look in the past, in the Old Testament, it was literally very few individuals. They had to be extremely strong-willed individuals that talked to God. Like we had Noah, who like building a boat the size of a skyscraper on a mountaintop. People are like, "You're nuts, dude." I mean, God had to choose these hardcore individuals to listen to Him because everybody else was too busy listening to whatever they were listening to. But in the history of before Jesus, very few people got the opportunity to fully have a relationship with God. They didn't even, there was no, I mean, I guess there was the 10 Commandments, but really there was no Jesus. I mean, I've been trying to imagine lately a world without Jesus. Like, boy, if Jesus didn't live and die and raise up again, I don't know where we'd be.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. And, the interesting thing about Old Testament saints or people who knew God, the one thing they had in common was humility. They were utterly desperate for God. And if you read, whether it's Noah, Moses, or David, oh yeah, they did. And there's this great humility. But, I think that the masses had access to God as well, based on what Jesus would do. And this gets into
that's interesting.
theology, but the Old Testament sacrifices that happen in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant Testament, the sacrifices that happen in the Old Covenant Testament were looking forward to what Christ would do on the cross. And though they didn't understand that necessarily, clearly that's what Jesus was doing, so that people in the Old Testament could enjoy a relationship with God, but there was this constant going to the temple every time they sinned and offering sacrifice. Well, now Jesus has offered the final sacrifice so that we have direct and total access to God just as normal people. I like your tether language. I think really make that true, my friend. Make him your tether and allow him to be your tether. But sometimes a tether really jerks you up short too.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you need a little bit of a jerk, but I think it's really because the darkness is so vast. And when you start, I like to explore, like I said, life in general, but the darkness is everywhere. And then and subtle. When you start scratching on it, especially in Hollywood, like trying to make movies, there's a lot of darkness that's hidden. And so it starts seeming, after a while, it all seems normal. It's like I kind of fall into the rhythm of being programmed by whatever I'm around in the moment. And it's like I do need that snap myself back into gear. And then I need to like do this a little bit, which means, and the practical way to do that, you're right. Practice. It's daily practice of the red letters. It's taking the Bible, shrinking it down to such a manageable size, where it's just the New Testament, red letters, words of Jesus. And it's like, it feels like a manual. This was great, bro.
I want to encourage you to do one more thing.
Okay.
So I have this series in Matthew. You'll find it at citychurchboise.com. I did a whole series on the Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, okay.
I'll
link that up to this episode.
20 or 25 sermons. I mean,
oh my gosh. Okay, I'm just listen through those.
Dive in, bro, and let's start talking about it.
Okay, I'm in, because the Sermon on the Mount, I need to, just like a good coach would tell you, practice the fundamentals over and over if you want to get good. Yeah.
Hey, buddy, I love you. I'll see you soon.
Love you too, bro. Later.
Thank you for joining us for the Healthy and Family Show. Visit our website at healthyandfamily.com. That's healthyandfamily.com to see what all the other doctors, experts, and real moms have to say about keeping your whole family healthy. This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutro.com, Whole Family Nutrition, and aired on the Goldstone Network. People, Planet, Future.